This episode is brought to you by freedadcourse.com. You are always one conversation away from changing your life, and the power of hello is something that I subscribe to every single day, and I'm always saying hello to new people everywhere I go. Increasing your opportunity, increasing your connection, and getting access to the solutions to the problems that you are facing, whether you're on active duty or just beginning your veteran transition or even transitioning out for 20 years. On the other side of hello are the solutions that you're looking for. Again, head on over to freedadcourse.com. Get your 5-episode audio course to create more connection, create more friendships, and get back to living the life that you're trying to design.
Dory 1, this is Fire Team Delta. Dad's coming home. Welcome to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, where it is our mission to bring every dad home. I am your host, Ben Killoy. I'm a United States Marine veteran, husband, and a father. We will bring authentic conversations to inspire action in your life so we can close the gap between the dad you are today and the dad you want to be tomorrow. This is the Military Veteran Dad Podcast. Today on the show, we have Nick Belfiore, United States Marine veteran, husband, and father of 2. He is the founder and CEO of Moving the Stone, LLC. He has an MBA, and he has specialized in federal contracting with veteran entrepreneurs. And he just recently started blogging for the veteran small business company, Street Shares. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Ben, thanks for having me, brother.
Go ahead and fill a few gaps in that intro and tell us what your family looks like right now.
So as you mentioned, I am a father of 2. I've got a beautiful girl, Amelia, who is 4 years old as of the date of this recording. And a little hellraiser who is 6 months old, my son, Henry. My wife, Elizabeth, and I have been together for, oh my goodness, it is going to be, we're going to be married for about 7 years in about a couple months. And loving life right now.
I remember when you first shared that your newborn picture and you were a little bit scared to death of what life was like and those first few sleepless nights that you were sharing about and losing that sleep. They're sleeping now, aren't they?
The 4-year-old is sleeping. The 6-month-old is getting on board with the program slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely. And your wife's back to work now, right?
She is. Yes.
And the day of recording, this is Veterans Day.
Yes. Great day to be around.
It is a great day to talk about that, being a dad. What does it mean for you to come home? When I say the word come home, what does that mean for you?
So for me, coming home, I remember coming back from exercises, from deployments, and that feeling of coming back to, for me, it was coming back to the barracks and walking in the room and just dropping all my gear on the floor and just shedding all the weights and the dust and everything that I was carrying. And for me, coming home is kind of that similar mental and emotional feeling of being able to walk in and shed the weights emotionally and mentally and spiritually of all the gear and the burden of everything I've been carrying with me. So being able to come home and drop all the burdens, all the stress of life, of the responsibilities that I have, and being able to kind of walk in free and kind of a little bit lifted up to be able to be with my family and be home.
You were telling that story about dropping all your gear. I was thinking about how great it was when you took your socks off.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
When you're just like,
Yeah, I feel that cool air come in and rush on you.
And you're like, it's over. These pups are barking. So when you drop all that stuff down, I can't imagine that came naturally in the beginning. What work did you have to do to let go of some of that stuff? Because it doesn't come natural for dads, veterans, or anybody in the military to let go of that. It's a lot of burden that we kind of carry on our shoulders, where a lot of dads listening to this don't drop that pack and drop what's on their mind, or even open up about what's on their mind or on their back.
So I think for me, the first and foremost thing was adjusting my mindset and realizing that it was okay to let go of those things, that we didn't have to hold on to it. So the first thing for me was realizing that strength always doesn't come from holding on to things. And sometimes strength is shown in letting go, right? So that we get taught, I know you're a former Marine like I am, we get taught that strength is comes from muscle, that strength comes from being strong and building ourselves up. But sometimes I think now as transitioning into the civilian world, we need to realize that strength comes from letting our guard down and being willing to be vulnerable. So the first step for me was that mindset shift to saying it's okay to drop that pack, right? It's okay to not have to walk around with all my gear on, with all that emotional gear on all the time, because I'm okay now. That was the first step. And then it was trying to train myself to be okay doing that. So whether it was on as I'm preparing to come home and drop that gear, doing some breathing exercise, doing some box breathing to help me address some of the anxiety that I get when I'm getting ready to drop that gear. So box breathing, or coming home and physically getting on the level and kneeling down with my four-year-old daughter and getting on her level and looking at her and being there present with her, to kind of get myself in that physical presence and mental presence to be with her and not have my mind in a million other places. Those are kind of the things I'm using to be present there in my home and in my family.
I like what you said there. And a lot of veterans, we walk out with an ego the size of Superman. And the first thing that we have to realize is that we have to let go of that ego and turn it off. Because with that ego on, we're closed-minded. We think we need to figure it all out on our own. We recognize that opening up, being vulnerable is the opposite of what is going well. And we start having conversations in our head that ultimately only have one way out. And that's why we see such high veteran suicide rates these days, is because we have these conversations where it's just, you just keep convincing yourself of some version of the truth, when in reality it's the complete opposite, but it's what you've convinced yourself over the years by just repeating it.
Yeah, and I think it was actually in a conversation you and I had where you described it as this echo chamber of your head, where you say one thing and it just echoes back louder and louder because that's all you hear. So breaking that cycle of getting out of your head is huge.
And me and you both met in a Facebook dads group, which is one of the other things that helps that pack fall off, I believe, is recognizing and finding that tribe. And the man that leads the group, Larry Hagner, he said something, I think earlier in the year, that really resonated with me, in that for 2,000 years, men survived in tribes. And in the last 100, we've somehow thought we could do it without that. And so a key part of transitioning is finding that tribe to be with other men and to do life together, because we weren't designed to do it alone.
Absolutely.
The military convinces you in a lot of ways that's what you have to do with your being, what you have to do to complete the mission.
Yeah, but when you think about it, I mean, that's one of the things I missed the most was that camaraderie we had. And as a former Marine, I'm sure you recognize part of that as well, that brotherhood, that camaraderie of being Marines. And it's part of what I miss. It's part of what I look for, that tribe outside. So finding that group, that band of brothers, whatever you may call it, that tribe, that people that you can live life with, is huge.
Kids spell love Time, and it's one of the very first things I like to help dads who may not be thinking of growth and being a better dad, that the simplest things allow for you to show up in their life and for them to feel love. What are a few things that you use and time bombs that you can share with us to help you show up in your kids' life that are super simple, a simple life hack that you do it every time and your kids absolutely love it?
Ben, one of the things I think I mentioned before that I found so impactful is physically getting down at my daughter's level when I'm talking with her. So that looks like, we're having a conversation, or especially when she's upset, is taking that knee and getting down to the level of a 4-year-old and looking at her face to face, looking at her in the eye and talking to her about what's going on. And I think just doing that has helped us connect so much more than if I was physically looking down upon her as we were having conversations.
Or even during like punishment when you're trying to talk about some bad behavior, I always find like rubbing in their back and just getting down their level in a very soft voice, not raising it, that they can start to understand that emotion, because kids are just like a factory of unwired, uncontrolled emotions. And that, like what you're saying, getting down allows them to not feel threatened about whatever they're feeling and allows them to talk to you about it. And then my oldest daughter is 6, and I definitely notice it with her, that helping her navigate whatever she's feeling and whatever she did because of that feeling, and helping her understand how she could use it differently or channel it differently. Those are definitely key things to help do things. What's your favorite thing to just have fun with your kids?
It's the simplest things, right? It's literally getting out in the yard and running around with no purpose or anything. It's literally, let's go run in the yard. And her eyes light up, her face lights up, and we literally just chase each other around and run in the yard. And we'll do it for half an hour. And we'll come in exhausted, happy, and love it.
I love entering their imagination. Just turning off whatever expectations you have and just jumping on and going for a ride with whatever they've got cooked up in their head.
It's great. And people, we fall into it, right? We're spending hundreds of dollars on these electronic toys that have all the bells and whistles that do everything. And she's out there running in the yard, playing with cardboard boxes and all the simple things of life.
I made a fort with my kids just last week, and they were making forts on their own this week because Daddy did it with them this last week. Those little moments is all they really want.
I love it.
When you think of your kids being 30 at a bar, talking with their friends, what do you want them to remember about you?
Oh boy. First of all, it's terrifying thinking of them as 30.
Walk through the fear.
But I think it's just that I cared, right? That I was there and I loved them and I cared enough to be there. That's what mattered the most, right? That I put them in front of all else. Because that's the truth, right? That's what matters the most. And I hope that I'm through my actions able to communicate that enough to them so that they're able to take that with them.
Or that you provided that role model of what a man should do.
Right. I mean, especially having a daughter, I hope that I'm the example that she looks to when she eventually far, far down the line is looking for qualities in a husband. And for my son, who's only 6 months, that he's able to be that, to somebody.
Have you ever read the book Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters?
I have.
Scary as hell book, man.
Oh yeah.
For 60% is just like doom and gloom. And I'm just like, it can't be like this. And there was a thing in there I remember to this day, and I often repeat it, that just hugging your daughter reduces it by like 60% chance that they'll have sex by the age of 12. Because they have affection from you and they won't go seek it from others. So those simple examples, I love that answer for what they want you to remember. when they're looking at a guy across the bar, they're going to be looking at qualities in you.
Yeah, for sure.
You want that to be the right metric, not the other way around, because they will find it. They will reflect exactly how you were. As a dad, what was your scariest moment? And what did this moment teach you? And how did it enable you to grow as a dad?
Oh, scariest moment. So obviously everything in the first year of my first daughter's life was terrifying. But I think, scary, everything is scary as a first time parent. But going back to truly being terrified, one of the things that stuck out in my mind is going back to having problems in my just the relationship with my wife, right? Because before we were parents, we were also husband and wife, and I think that's still at the core of our family is the relationship with my wife. And as with any relationships, there's ups and downs, and my wife and I had a down moment and a big fight, and it brought up lots of questions and lots of emotion and lots of feelings. And just that glimmer of a thought of, oh my gosh, what could this lead to? And then the snowball effect of those fears and those emotions leading to, oh my gosh, what could possibly happen to my family, was terrifying. But that moment taught me so much about what it meant to take leadership of my family, right? It taught me so much about what it meant to take ownership of my actions. And it enabled me to be such a better father and such a better husband, because I realized, I think, so much more truly and so much more deeply what was all on the line when we talked about my relationship with my wife, and what was on the line when we talked about my relationship with my family. It was everything, right? All of this was on the line. Everything we talked about, running around the yard with my daughter, the future, what things were going to look like in 30 years. All of this was on the line, and it was all centering around the relationship with my wife, because for us, that's the center of our family. So the scariest moments, I think, was when things started to come into question with that core of our family. And it taught me what it meant to step forward as a man, as a husband, as a father, and lead our family.
And really come home.
Yeah, and really come home.
As you were talking, I was thinking about, I think a lot of veterans in the military were trained for success. We prepare for success, and we prepare to maintain control of the mission. But in marriage, and many times in family, control is an illusion that never actually exists. And just surrendering it. And you can prepare yourself for marriage. You can prepare yourself for being a dad, but it's really hard to train for it. It's messy. It's icky sometimes. Sometimes it's joyous. Sometimes it's the happiest memories, and you can't control it. You really just have to be prepared to have what you need to know when that moment happens. It's an awesome answer. What advice would you give for a dad looking to come home to his marriage?
Well, I think you say it often. It's let's be prepared to get messy, right?
Just Frizzle's advice is the best advice.
There you go. But I think you have to be prepared to be honest with yourself, right? Be prepared to recognize what gear you're carrying, because if you're not honest with yourself about what you're carrying, you can't be ready to put it down. Once you're open with yourself about what you're carrying, only then can you put it down. And only once you put it down can you be free of it and free to really engage and come home and be truly there with your family. So that the advice would be to be honest with yourself and to roll forward from there.
I often find the question when you're outsourcing the blame or outsourcing really accountability of your life to others, there's a question be like, is it really 100%? And usually it's not, but it's super easy to outsource all your problems and outsource the reason that you have the problem to someone else. But in reality, there's probably some piece of advice. I often repeat to myself, if I'm having a problem, did I really apply all the advice I've ever been given about this problem? And it's generally not. And I'm like, okay, I'll try one of those pieces of advice, because that means I still have control over something, and I'm the only person I have control over.
Absolutely.
What is the biggest difference in your life for the person you are today versus the person when you got out?
It's so interesting you followed that up with that question, because it's exactly that. It's taking ownership of my choices. It's taking ownership of who I am and the control I have over what I'm doing, and not saying, well, I'm doing this because of something else, or this is just who I am. It's saying, okay, here's what I can control. Here's what I can't control because of whatever it may be. And here's what I'm going to do to control what I can control and move forward. And that's all I can do, right? Is to control what I can control and attempt to move forward.
What's a mantra that you have when you have those low days that you feel like you're in a funk? What's a mantra that you often, or a ritual that you do to reflect on to get you out of it?
Start with one thing. Just start with one thing and then work on the next thing, but start with one thing and get one thing done, right? Work that compound effect, that 1%, but start with one thing and hopefully get that ball rolling and work on the next thing.
My wife often tells me that when it comes to the to-do list around the house, because I get super stressed. I'm like, there's 15 million things that I should be fixing or working on or finishing. And she's like, just pick one thing. And then once you pick one thing, then 2-3 things. And then you're at the end of the day, you're like, well, it wasn't so bad.
Yep.
I often find that in my head, it feels like a fog sets in where you don't even know which way you're pointing anymore. And it's usually because you're standing still. And the moment you start moving, the fog starts to lift. And that action creates clarity. And so much of even the journey me and you have been on, you don't get clarity until you start moving. Even if you don't even know if it's the right direction, just the physical action of moving towards something will help you give clarity in your life, what you're looking for.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely.
What is a resource or a book you would recommend to other military veterans' dads, and why?
So there's so many resources out there, and if you Google it or you step into a physical bookstore, that if you can find one that's still around, there's so many things out there. But when we're talking specifically about a military veteran and dad, one thing that really resonated with the veteran in me was the book Resilience. It really struck home with me about a lot of what we talked about here on this podcast, about getting back up, about finding that one thing and moving forward and getting the ball rolling. So that's where that's the one thing I'd start with is reading Resilience and getting that ball rolling and start taking those first steps out of that fog if that's where you are.
Where can people find you if they want to follow up with you, Nick?
So I'm on all the social media and online platforms. Moving the Stone LLC is the business. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Moving the Stone LLC is the business. I'm on all those platforms. Dominic Belfiore is the full name. That's the platform I'm on all those. Happy to connect with any of your listeners and chat about any of life's topics.
You're like a super ninja. Whenever I see you, it's like everywhere. Facebook has like Dominic has just shared 5 things. I'm like, it's everywhere. And it's always something awesome that you're sharing or where you're popping in at. Or your LinkedIn content is also really good. And I've enjoyed reading your articles on Street Shares as well.
Thanks. It's a great platform.
Well, Nick, thank you for coming on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I know we're going to help some other dads come home with the content we provide today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
That's a wrap. And thank you for listening to today's show, and I really hope you enjoyed it. The lifeblood of any new podcast are the reviews. If you haven't reviewed the podcast yet on iTunes, I would really appreciate it, and you will help us get the message out to even more military veteran dads. As John Maxwell says, if there is hope in the future, there is power in the present. Dads, it's time to come home.